Hey guys, and welcome to the Texas SignalCast. My name is Jessica Montoya Coggins, and I'm joined by David Leffler today. Hey, David.
Hey, Jessica, it's exciting to be here with you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So we were just commenting on the fact that December always feels very crazy. It's the holidays. People are bustling around trying to get gifts, maybe seeing family and friends. But one thing that's really happening in Texas is the filing deadline. So what have you had any thoughts? A lot of these races are getting solidified, people coming in at the last moment. What are you feeling?
I know I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here, I've been counting down till the filing deadline, and I'm like, we're almost there. And then I'm stepping back thinking, good God, it's only December 9th right now. It's so much has happened that we've already had people come out and then and then step back from their races, which we can get to in a moment. But yeah, I mean, a few exciting things. I think you and I were talking about before we started this recording, but Susan Hayes coming out to run for ag commissioner seems particularly topical and exciting, given the fact that until recently, the very corrupt and cartoonish Sid Miller was running unopposed for the Republicans. And for those who are less familiar with him, a simple Google search will show you everything you need to know. But Sid Miller famously used taxpayer money, and I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 to go to Oklahoma to get what was called a Jesus
Jesus
shot.
shot, the Jesus shot. I
The Jesus
remember having
shot.
to look it up.
The man is anti COVID shot, but he's very pro Jesus shot. And so it's exciting just to have a chance to have a new face and someone who seems pretty exciting. I know you had a chance to talk with Susan just the other day, right?
Yeah, it was just sort of happenstance. She was up in Dallas at an event, and I overheard that she was running, and I was like, "Oh, heck yes!" Because as you had said, nobody was running in this race, and as an agricultural commissioner is actually a hugely important field. This oversees sort of school lunches. This works with a lot of rural farmers, and Susan is also a cannabis attorney. So that is a
Mm-hmm.
major part of her plank, which I know one of our colleagues, Fern, is I think probably very excited about. But yeah, so she's an attorney. She also does work with Jane's Due Process. She is also currently living in a rural area. She's living in Alpine, Texas right now. So I am very excited about that. And we did talk about how she would distinguish herself from Sid Miller, who has really, it's embarrassing. His social media feeds are just like a cesspit of racism, bigotry, Islamophobia. It is very appalling that he was running unopposed up until now.
Right. Yeah. His stances on anything is he's like the classic drunk uncle at the holiday party, and it's like that makes it sound funny, but it's actually terrifying that someone like that could hold power for as long as he has in Texas. And on top of all those things, he's not even good at his job, right? I'm sure, as you remember, as many of our listeners remember, he was pushing for a policy that to help tamp down the wild feral hogs that are a big problem in Texas, especially in West Texas. But his solution to it was leaving out these giant bins of poison for them. And people had to basically tell him, hey, that's gonna, in case you don't realize how kind of ecological and wildlife communities work, you're going to end up poisoning a number of different animals as well as the drinking water and everything else like that. So he's corrupt. He's also just not very smart. And so, yeah, it's good to have someone like Susan in there. Did anything kind of stand out to you about y'all's conversation?
Yeah, she really mentioned a lot about sort of rural hospitals and how rural healthcare has been decimated, and that it's had a disproportionate impact on a lot of the farming community. So that's
Right.
something she wanted to focus on. Another big thing, so the purview with the agricultural commissioner is school lunches. And so with Sid Miller, he's obviously not on board with healthy foods and making sure kids have adequate
Right,
fruits and vegetables.
right.
So Susan is the exact opposite. Obviously, I think it is fine for kids to have some chips and snacks at some point, but it's I think a good idea to actually give them nutritious meals. And so that, and then also hemp and cannabis, we did talk a fair amount about that. And then the other thing that I don't know if you felt this way, but I remember when Borat 2 came out and in the trailer Sid Miller appears?
Yes.
Yeah, so y'all should check this out. He appears. I think he got duped by Sacha Baron Cohen, but in the actual movie, that scene doesn't appear. So I've been trying to figure out, like, maybe there's a director's cut that we can have or something, because I felt very deprived by that.
I know. Rudy Giuliani had to steal all of the shine in that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's if you 3D printed a caricature of a stupid Texan, right? I mean, it really is Sid Miller. And to have someone who's from those communities like Susan is, who's already helped craft policy, right? I know she played a role in helping pass the 2019 bill to legalize hemp farming. Which she talks about much more fluidly than I can, about just how big of a market our agriculture communities are missing out on because the state has taken its long approach to hemp and cannabis.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that we would get on board once Oklahoma did this.
Right.
Usually Texas doesn't like to trail Oklahoma in anything, except for the football teams. But
we make a habit out of that, yeah.
Yeah. But so that was very exciting. And I know we also had a shakeup in our lieutenant governor's race, Matthew Dowd, who surprised a lot of people. He started out as a Democrat in Texas politics and then became a Republican. Worked for the Bush campaigns, was a talking head also, I think, on ABC News. He decided that he was running for lieutenant governor, but then he dropped out this week. Were you surprised about that, or did that seem like, that tracks?
Matthew Dowd, we hardly knew you. Yeah. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, I think, for people who may not be as familiar, his whole thing is that he was a Republican, but then he was a never Trumper, and he had this whole logo about country over party. And so I think there was, some people who felt as he was coming out, it's like, hey, from a progressive standpoint, probably not the first choice, but, if he's able to kind of peel back some moderates and maybe even a few Republicans, maybe he's got something here. And it became pretty evident early on that just really was not the case. There wasn't a lot of people coming out in this corner. I didn't really see anything about him making a ton of public appearances. And yet I don't think anyone could have expected that he'd be dropping out, here in early December. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Yeah, I think so. And his note sort of made it sound like he didn't want to stand in the way of a diverse slate. We are expecting Carla Braley, who is from Houston, and I know has worked with the party, that she's going to enter that race. And I think a lot of people are very worried. If you had a ticket that was 3 white men, that I don't know how good that would be. And I know that we have to sort of mention this elephant in the room of a new poll that came out that shows Beto in a little harder spot than maybe we've seen. Are you familiar with this poll at all?
Right. Yeah. The Quinnipiac poll that just came out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was surprising to see. I mean, especially after seeing some of the 3-way splits we'd seen whenever McConaughey, our future Lord and Savior, was in the running. I mean, because even on the head-to-head between Beto and Abbott, they've been pretty close. But the poll just came out, I believe it was this morning on the 9th. It showed that Abbott was leading by, I believe, 15 points, right?
Yeah, 15 points. And the topics that I think were a little, border and sort of that tends to be pretty high. But abortion was low. I think it was only like 9% of voters, even ranked that. And it's been 100 days since Senate Bill 8. This is the extreme anti-abortion bill that is also that sort of citizen vigilante clause that allows anyone to sue someone they believe has aided or abetted an abortion. And it's a little dispiriting to me, where I just thought like, oh, well, this is certainly going to have people concerned. And then we had the Supreme Court hearing last week in a Mississippi case that could potentially overrule Roe v. Wade. And it's just like, you know what, this doesn't seem to be as potent it doesn't seem to move the needle as much as I thought it would.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was at 9%, and voting rights was at 8%. And so in terms of, these are people's top, issues that they're concerned about. And those are two things, especially, women's access to abortion, have been so top of mind, not just for Texas coverage, but nationally. And so to see that those things were taking a distant backseat to the border, I mean, I understand that, if this is going to be a even split of people that they're speaking to, Republicans are going to, kind of put their thumb on the scale when it comes to the border. But I mean, still, the splits there were worrying, and it shows just how much work Democrats and Beto have to really kind of push back against some of this. And the thing is that, when you look at these issues, it's always going to be a challenge for Beto to be able to hit every single one of these things that the governor, problems that the governor has created. It's kind of similar to how, whenever Trump was president, he tells so many lies that the media just couldn't keep up with fact checking. And it was kind of this flurry. That's kind of what Abbott and the Republicans have done from a policy perspective. But you could just gotta hope and hope that they're going to come up with a strategy to make sure that at least one of those things will stick and will overpower the border controversy or lack thereof.
Yeah, I mean, I did keep in mind that, this race is still 11 months away, which is a lifetime in politics. Truly, I mean, that's like multiple lifetimes.
Right.
So, who knows how things are going. And I myself am preparing for another power grid breakdown.
Right.
Unlike, the state legislature, who's just like, I guess their whole strategy is just like to keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And so, that's another thing, because, that also didn't really show up at all in the polling. And, maybe it has been a while. People, things sort of fade from memory, even though that really shouldn't. That was extremely traumatic for the state. But so we'll see, and we'll definitely keep a lookout, as candidates file in. We've had a couple also good things. Candidates have filed in several district attorneys races. I know that there's still some state house seats that it doesn't look like, sort of waiting on any last minute hopefuls there. But I mean, it's hugely important. And we'll also see too, I know that there is a hearing for a Senate district in Fort Worth. This is one that the Republicans gerrymandered out. And it is for mid-January. Now, y'all know early voting starts February 14th, and I think military and overseas ballots are shipping like also mid-January. So we're kind of coming to the wire here. And we're also coming to the wire for any federal legislation, and it does not look like that is going to happen.
Yeah. And as you said, just kind of putting a bow on the kind of polling thing, is that, as you mentioned, we're so far away. And so for anyone who's listening, there's not reason to panic, right? I mean, to show how much these things ebb and flow, Abbott's approval rating was, I think, 42% in September. And then this new poll showed him at, I think it was like 52%, right? That's a 10-point leap. And also, given a lot of these things seem to be miscalculated in terms of how well Democrats would do, but I know we have to pay attention to them, but, in terms of putting all of our trust in polls after 2020, in 2016, in terms of how elections were looked to be shaken out and didn't necessarily the case, it just, if nothing else, this is a sign that, it's time to organize. It's time to continue getting the word out, and that 2022 is going to be a really big year, and that the hope is that, as we've been talking about, there's plenty of things to connect with Texans about that are very tangible.
Right. And I mean, we're still coming up on, Republicans are trying to have a fourth session.
Yes.
Do they want to talk about the grid? No. Would they like to ban COVID-19 vaccine mandates? Yes. That's sort of what's taking up their time. And we're kind of also at a phase where we don't really know with this new variant
Right.
how it will impact. I know, there's been cases in Houston and Dallas already, as this probably expected. But in regions, I was just doing a story about that, and I was looking at some of the hospital regions, and in places like Amarillo, they're already starting to see, they have worker shortages, and they're starting to see sort of an influx of patients and getting to that sort of scary area again for hospitals. And I mean, I just don't know how we can do that again. Like
For the third time,
for
for the
the
third
third time.
different
Yeah.
variant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something I had seen today was that there were at least 30 or more than 30 hospitals that are completely out of beds right now. Like, this is before the temperatures have really dropped.
Yeah.
The variant is only, it's clearly here, but it hasn't really kind of reared its ugly head yet. And so, yeah, I mean, I just, it does feel like deja vu all over again, because but it is. But yeah, we just hope that people are able to stay safe. Get your booster if you're listening to this. I got mine. Have you gotten yours yet?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
kind of actually knocked me out. I was a little surprised. Like the day I got it, I was fine. And then the day after, I really was just in bed. I couldn't get
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Give yourself a good
Yeah,
24
yeah.
hours. Get some takeout, watch a movie.
Yeah, I scheduled it for Friday, so at Saturday I just
Same. What a way to spend a
yes,
weekend. I know.
yeah. I think I watched like an entire show of I can't even remember what, but it was yeah. So get the booster. Um,
Did you see any other filings that kind of caught your eye?
um, well, on the Republican side, I think we had a bit of a field day when Louis Gohmert
Oh
decided to
yeah,
run for Attorney General.
Uncle Louis.
Yeah. So he did officially file. And I guess we'll see how that goes. I mean, Paxton was on a conservative radio program. He expects to just win outright, not even with a runoff. But I don't know. I mean, when Gomer entered, it was kind of marred by some technical difficulties because he was trying to broadcast and they couldn't do it. But I saw a little clip that someone took on Facebook, and it sounds like they're actually worried about Ken Paxton's legal culpability.
Yeah.
And George Bush and Eva Guzman were not getting traction, and this is, I think, a little Hail Mary. And I wrote a piece. I did not know a lot about Gomert's background, and he is shockingly very well educated and has sort of a background that I think Republicans would like.
Go into detail. I want to hear more.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, he was at Texas A&M. He was the class president there. He was at Baylor Law School. And then he had a military scholarship. So he was in the JAG. For those who have parents or grandparents that watch NCIS, that whole thing. I remember my grandmother loved JAG and she liked NCIS. So it's like, oh God, she might consider voting for Louis Gohmert because of that. But yeah, so and then he was a judge, by the way. So he served for a number of years. Very probably he gained some notoriety. There was a case in front of him with someone who stole a car who was an HIV positive man. And Gohmert basically gave him a form that basically required him to obtain consent from any person he's seeing. And so that was crazy. And then he actually served on the Court of Appeals. Perry appointed him. So yeah, I went down the Gohmert rabbit hole, and I was very surprised by this.
A place no person should ever go.
Yeah.
For anyone who was listening, I know I wasn't talking there. I'm just shaking my head out of disgust at all of this. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly, if nothing else, like, he must be some kind of really good actor, because he's very good despite his pedigrees. You're talking about coming off very stupid. He's clearly got that part down.
Well, yeah, and I know our colleague William, he took a look at because I think he wanted to change the moon's orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that
so
right.
yeah. So I think William took a look at how that is not something that we can do, but
we'll have to get back to you on that, Louis.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw. Did you see the thing from his campaign this weekend or this week?
Ooh.
I saw that he. I don't know who out there was really, 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 really needing a boost from the Louis Gohmert camp, but I saw that they had issued an email. I don't know if there was a rumor out there that he had done the otherwise, but the email saying, like, breaking: Louis Gohmert has not endorsed anyone. I don't know, just to be very clear, he has not offered his endorsements to anyone. So I don't know who out there is wondering about that. It was like, it's like the meme when it's like nobody, and it's like Louis Gohmert. I'm not endorsing anyone. But I found that humorous.
Yeah, well, good to know. But yeah, we'll keep an eye out. There's a couple of races here up in North Texas that I'm seeing for state rep. I don't know if I got to tell you, but Joe and I get to lament. I got totally redistricted out of everything. So
did you?
Yes, everything: congressional, state house, state senate. I think even that Board of Education. So I was just, I didn't really have anything to say about that. I'm just like, oh,
well, you're seeing firsthand, right? I mean, like, for someone who's much less politically engaged, but they have, they at least, are familiar with who's representing them. They know their name, whatever it may be. The person has a big community presence. That completely strips away that person's access to it, and it can break their tether to the political system entirely if they don't really know who's going to be representing them now.
Yeah, I had to break it to someone that we were talking about Colin Allred, and she was like, "Oh, I'm just so excited. He's my congressman." I was like, "Well, at least for now." And then she was like, "What?" And I was like, because she lives not that far from where I am, and I kind of know where the maps are. And I was like, "Oh, well, we're now in Beth Van Dyne's district," and so she just looked at me, just like, "No, I'm not." And then later that afternoon, she the Texas Tribune has a way you can just put your address in and see where you are, and yeah, we've got Beth Van Dyne as our representative. Feels wonderful, really great.
Yeah, and I think that's like, there's many examples of that in Texas politics these days, but it just feels like a great example of how Republicans are able to work the system, where people, if they even do find out, about, something that was done to them through a very convoluted process like redistricting, it's too late. And it's like, better luck in 10 years, So but that's a really good, I'm glad you shared that, because it's important for people to recognize that, like, of course, talking about there's multiple layers to the disenfranchisement that's happening.
I mean, it's very, and I was looking at some of these, the way that they've gerrymandered, especially in North Texas, and there's areas of Collin County, areas that actually voted for a Democrat in 2020, and those precincts now go into a district near Paris, Texas, and that's 2 hours away. And then there's other sort of like Hispanic precincts that are now tethered to a district in Waxahachie,
which is not.
Yeah. So I mean, we will see. This legislation, is being heard about these maps. And in North Carolina, they actually their primary has been delayed. I think it was about the same time as ours was supposed to be, because their Supreme Court did rule the maps were wrong. So we'll see. But for now, our primary is set for March 1st, but it could
pending DOJ investigation. Yeah.
Well, I know you had one thing about Ted Cruz that you wanted to mention to sort of close out our we always like to make fun of our senator.
And on a high note, I got this, then I have actually one more thing for you. In fact, maybe we start with this and we'll end with Ted Cruz and on a happy note. I know that you found a really concerning investigation from the Army Times about some pretty troubling things going on with the troops that have been brought in by the governor at the southern border. What exactly?
Sure. Just I would encourage everyone to go to the Army Times. It's an investigation piece by one of their writers. David Wilkie, and it really caught my eye at first. I wasn't sure what it was about, but basically it's sort of, because of, Abbott, we have brought in a number of different guardsmen from many Republican-led states like South Dakota, Tennessee, that they've been coming to the border, trying to quote unquote help with our border strategy. And actually what's really happened and what this investigation uncovered is that because they don't have a lot to do, there's been incredibly high rates of alcohol and drug abuse. There's been several deaths related to accidents. There was another soldier who contracted COVID-19, could not get adequate medical care, died basically alone in a hotel room. This is sort of happening when Abbott is constantly talking about, oh, we're strengthening the border, the Biden administration, the Biden border crisis, and we're doing all this. And this is like some real life or death stuff that has happened because of this. And I just, as we were talking about, that sort of poll with Beto, it reminded me that, even though Republicans, quote unquote, own the border strategy, like this is not, if they do, then they should own everything that happens with it, including what this investigation showed.
Right. Absolutely. No, well said. It's embarrassing and it's disturbing, and it's entirely preventable because these people are only there because of a manufactured crisis and propaganda fueled campaign from the governor. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's the situation where you can't claim that, first of all, obviously the whole reason why they're there is fabricated, but also you can't be the kind of leading party that always gets to try to claim that they're pro-military, and then when it comes to the well-being of the people who are serving, you can kind of sweep that away and keep saying like, well, we want to provide all these billions of dollars to the military. As you mentioned, you have to own that, and this is an important investigation. I hope that more comes out about it, and we have to make sure we get that out to as many people as possible, because I know you even mentioned that there was a letter involved.
Basically, I think the investigation got sort of spurred by a letter was left it was an anonymous letter, left under doors for certain commanders, and then also given to this investigator from the Army Times. And, basically the person who wrote it was just like, this is, why are we here? I'd rather, he uses some very dark language concerning, death by suicide, that he would prefer to this. And so then I think that is what spawned this investigation. And it was interesting. Ruben Gallego and another Republican congressman, were quoted in the article. Mm-hmm. And, the Republican congressman kind of was like, well, see, this is why, the Biden stuff, and this Biden owns this, and not really. But Gallego, who is a former Marine veteran, he sort of went into like why we're doing these things, and even too, like with a lot of these guards that are coming down, they don't have equipment, so they're supposed to be patrolling at night, and they don't have any night goggles. So
this is the most well-financed military in the world,
right? Yeah. So it's basically like they're trying to see in the dark, which, I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't do that. I'm not an X-Men. Like
you can't. What?
No.
Yeah, and also if I'm, I don't know, something tells me that you probably don't want someone who, say someone is a migrant and they come across one of these people and one of these soldiers who is patrolling. The last thing you want is someone who can't see what's in front of them, and they get scared and they have a weapon. That just doesn't. It seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also been instances where, there have been migrants that they're trying to declare, they're trying to get caught so they can declare asylum,
right? And
the troops that they basically fallen asleep because they haven't had adequate places to be in their hotel rooms. So, the migrant will sort of wait for several hours until, the guards.
Man, wake up. Yeah.
Wake up. Yeah. But I mean, but it's, they're staying in shoddy hotel rooms.
Right.
There's not enough space. And so I would definitely encourage Army Times to read that full investigation, and on my social media I've linked to it, and I definitely it was very, very sobering.
Yeah, and as you meant, and the thing is it's hard when having these kind of conversations to be able to remind ourselves that these are people, and not everything has to be so politicized. But at the end of the day, like, this issue has been made so political. It's the byproduct of, as we were saying before, a fear mongering campaign from the governor. And so this is a political problem. And we have to be able to talk about it in a way that's sensitive to about all the soldiers who are down there, because it's something that is not within their control, but rather it's in control of the governor. So
yeah, it just made me furious, where I was just like, why is this happening? And you feel a lot of compassion for sort of what these troops have to go through, and this is not necessarily what they signed up for,
right?
And this is definitely not what they signed up for, and it just made me really mad. And
it's like a common refrain that we have to say right now. It's just with a lot of things, it's like, who benefits from this? Who benefits from this? But on a lighter note, yes, I know we wanted to end with our good friend Ted Cruz. That he's known for being a really powerful debater, and he's got his really weird haircut. But he's actually in the news now because he's going to be appearing in front of the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court will be hearing a case that he's bringing about next month, I believe, because he's trying to recoup over $500,000 that he loaned himself whenever he ran against Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst in 2012. So it's kind of convoluted, but basically there's a 2002 law, it's campaign law, that says you can't recoup more than $250,000 to pay yourself back if you win. But Ted wants to get his money back, even though he had to, it says a lot about our political system that, that you have candidates who can lend themselves that much money. But that also, that considering how much money he's gained just from concealing himself in power since winning his election, that he still wants that back.
Yeah, I guess he hasn't made enough money. For earlier this year, he was selling Dr. Seuss books, which, okay. Everyone wants to get a Dr. Seuss book autographed by Ted Cruz. I guess those maybe like weren't selling like they
weird scrawl. yeah. So something to monitor. Hopefully, he doesn't get that back.
Well, and then also never forget, that I'm sure that Cancun trip, even though it was less than 24 hours, was expensive.
It's a pricey flight. It's a pricey.
Yeah, it looked like a nice villa that he was at too. So okay.
It was probably provided to him by some donor. Yeah. So here's to the next time, as the holidays come up, we won't have any more crazy surprises from you guys. Hopefully we'll have a few more names emerge from the Democratic field, but it's been a good week for that, as we talked about with Hayes and a few of the others. This has been a really good time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us. And thank you all so much for listening. And as always, you can subscribe to us on Patreon. You can also follow us on all the social media channels. We have a graphics editor, Ben. He's been doing an excellent job. I'm going to commission him in the next couple of days with my conversation with Susan Hayes on some cannabis and hemp related things that I think he's done a good job on that. But thank you, David, and we will chat with y'all a little later.